We live at a very difficult time. We live at a time when Americans have a fundamental choice to make about the way we view our country. Should we view our country with guilt or gratitude? And again, America is so extraordinary. I mean, and the history of America is so amazing. You basically have a core choice. You can either say it's because America is corrupt and evil and vicious and exploitative and racist and selfish and sexist and despoiling the environment. It's all these terrible things. America has gotten rich and powerful and gone from being a largely uninhabited, and it was, wilderness continent to being the center of the world economically and culturally and militarily in every way you can find. It's either that, because America's guilty, or there's another aspect, which is not accidental. And it seems to me that the most important point we can make with our children in teaching history is America is no accident. It's not, and then people say, well, it's a pattern of happy accidents. One of the things that I think the most important line in the book is a pattern of happy accidents is still a pattern. Because normally, if all of a sudden you're playing with dice and you keep rolling number 7 or any other number, you think, well, there's a pattern here. And the pattern here was enunciated by one of my favorite quotes ever. And it's from, not an American, it's from Otto von Bismarck, the Iron Chancellor of Germany. He said, "The good Lord has special protection for lost dogs, imbeciles, small children, drunkards, and the United States of America."
You quote that in one of these books.
I do, yeah.
But the fact is that, I mean, this is, many things are like this, where if you dare to look at the facts, you're gonna be troubled because there's only one conclusion. So you have the opportunity to avoid the facts, or you're going to come to this conclusion. It seems to me that it becomes pretty quickly overwhelming as a conclusion. But you practically gild the lily by telling one story after the other. It's almost funny to me because it would only be a handful of these and you'd say, that settles it. It's obvious that America came into being in a way that, you know, it doesn't seem conceivable. It's a coincidence. It just seems like God's hand. You know, I guess the point is that even these stories would make you believe in providence, would make you believe in the hand of God in history. But there are so many of these stories. That's what astonished me.
That's why it seems to me that they're important, because the other alternative is this idea of the 1619 Project, or any of that work, that whole worldview that suggests that America really is has a terrible and unique guilt. And by the way, this is not to say that America hasn't done terrible things. Of course we have. And of course there have been flaws. But the idea that America is uniquely guilty, not uniquely great, everyone agrees America is great. Walter McDougall, who's a professor at the University of Pennsylvania, actually he's now just a professor emeritus, but Walter McDougall says that if you look at the history of humanity for the last 500 years, the most significant development that has impacted everything in 500 years has been the rise of the United States. And it's something that no one could have predicted. There was no one, not Nostradamus, not anybody who actually said, in North America, where there was there was an indigenous population, but it was not, it was not a large population, nor was it a particularly advanced population. I know that's terrible and you can't say that, but the point being that the entire story of America is so unlikely that you either have to come to this conclusion of unique guilt or unique greatness.
I've been saying recently, when people question whether we can survive the current madness on so many fronts, in the natural, the answer would be no. But in the natural, the answer to the emergence of the United States and the survival and thriving of the United States also ought never to have happened. And your both books lay it out. You could just start with when you write about the Battle of Long Island, the Battle of Brooklyn. Washington should not have prevailed.
No, he should have been captured and hanged, according to the logic of history. They had just lost the most bloody battle of the Revolution, and it was. In the 8 years of the Revolutionary conflict, 1775 to 1783, the most costly battle was the Battle of Brooklyn. 3 American generals were captured. Washington's troop was surrounded and literally with no escape, because the British Navy, and there was no American Navy at the time, the British Navy was occupying the river between Manhattan and Brooklyn.
I just know enough about this because I've written about this, and it is unbelievable. I mean, when we're talking about, the British Navy was massed there. It was the greatest assembly of military craft, seacraft in the history of the world.
Up to that time, absolutely
Sitting
right.
next to Staten Island, waiting to crush the Continental Army.
And to capture the George Washington and the Continental Army right after they had committed treason by authorizing the Declaration of Independence, because we're talking about the summer, August of 1776. Now, how many people here are New Yorkers at any time? Do we have some New Yorkers? Okay, people who know New York know that in August, it very rarely has thick fog, so thick that you can't see. That fog was considered by the pastors at the time, by the non-believing military people, to be an act of God, because it allowed George Washington to use John Glover and his Marblehead Regiment, which was a bunch of fishermen, and to row the army, including the general-in-chief. They didn't lose a single person. They escaped. And the British officers believed it was the hand of the Almighty.
Well, just to, in case anybody's not, been boning up on the Battle of Brooklyn recently, it really is, it's extraordinary. The more you learn, the more fascinating it is. But the idea that, if you're familiar with the geography of New York, that, Queens, Brooklyn, the entire American Continental Army is on that side. They've just suffered this horrible battle. And I don't remember the details, but it's a crazy idea that Washington has, that if we can take the remainder of the army and sneak it across the East River, and by the way, the East River is not a river. It's an estuary, but it's called the East River. But that idea alone, to try to pull that off, it's crazy. And he does it under cover of night. And then as the sun is rising, which is what you've just said, an absolutely preposterous, opaque fog descends, so that the remainder, which is thousands of men, are able to cross to safety, enabling Washington to fight another day, to live to fight another day. So instead of liberty being strangled in its cradle, we get several more years of Washington fighting and ultimately winning. And I always think that's the ultimate example, really, of how it ought not to have happened. The United States ought not to have emerged.
And the United States would not have emerged without George Washington surviving. And that, again, there are multiple books written about this because it is so bizarre. Washington seemed to be indestructible. His first taste of real battle was at the first major battle of the French and Indian War, where he was a militia colonel from Virginia. He was 23 years old. And of the 70 British officers, mounted officers, he was the only one who wasn't either wounded or killed. And they shot his hat off. They found bullets through his hat. They shot two horses out from under him. And
not at the same time.
No, but
to be clear.
But there was a pastor who, after Washington returned, went through this whole story. Remember, he's 23 years old. He's nobody, really. But a pastor named Burchard spoke, who later became president of Princeton. But he spoke in church, and he said, try to comfort people about the losses for the battle. He said, but I want to commend that heroic youth, Colonel Washington, for surely the good Lord has singled him out for leadership of our country.
Wow.
Okay, you know,
That's
and again,
before
this
there
is
was a
written
country.
down, and right. It's when there was maybe a hope, a distant hope, that there would be a country.
Well, you write about that beautifully. I guess, you know, the larger question, Michael, is, this happens to me over and over. I discover something, I discover this book and the sequel and the stories, and I'm absolutely fascinated, thrilled, amazed, astonished, but that quickly turns to anger. Why haven't I heard this before? This is not some abstruse topic. This is American history, and it is not less than amazing that everyone doesn't know these stories.
I think that's absolutely right, and it's why I believe that the educational issues that you talk about, that we all talk about, needing to teach Americans about feeling gratitude rather than guilt, is such a tremendous priority for our children, because partially they'll be better and happier people. Yeah. Grateful people are happier people. Gratitude it's one of the reasons I'm proud to say I pray every morning, because basically we have so much to be grateful for.
Both of us had the fortune and misfortune of attending Yale University. And I have to say, I don't know what it was like when you were there, but when I arrived there as an innocent, patriotic son of immigrants, I was introduced for the first time in my life to the idea that America was a force for evil, that patriotism was for suckers and rubes, naive people who live in flyover country, and that the sophisticated view, of course, was that there's nothing glorious about America. And that idea, of course, it's unfortunately no longer just among some cultural elites at places like the humanities departments at Yale, but it has worked its way into the culture. You mentioned the 1619
No,
project.
it's poison in the national bloodstream. It is, and the point is that I think it's very important that people understand it, is that if you don't learn the truth that America is exceptional and blessed, then you will embrace the falsehood that America is exceptional and cursed.
If you think these conversations are valuable, would you do us a favor and please like this video and subscribe to this channel? When you do that, you help us get these conversations out to a wider audience by telling YouTube that people are interested in this. Also, you can go to SocratesInTheCity.com, sign up for our newsletter, and you can check back every week. There's new stuff here every week. Thank you for tuning in.